Actually, there may not have been anybody on at all, so fine. This back up again. Stream IO. Perfect. All right, so I'm just gonna start this all over again here. Now we are up and running. Awesome. So we had a little technical difficulties there. But for those of you just joining, we are building an Azure function that's going to create a QR code. And what we're doing is following along here with the building a QR code generator with Azure functions from allhandsontech.com. And in this, we're going to create an Azure function. We're going to implement a QR code generator, build a crude front end for it, and deploy it to Azure functions. So this is one of those things that I was sitting around with my coworkers in Salt Lake, and I said, we could just do something wild and zany, like generating a QR code with an Azure function or something. And it's just kind of off the top of my head, and I thought, you know, something that's completely useless yet educational. And then I started to think about it later, and I'm like, that's exactly what I'm going to do. So we did that, built an article around it. I recorded a video doing it, and now we're going to do it live on a live stream. And what you've missed, if you're just joining us, is we ran two commands here. We created a new Azure function template that creates the project, and then we ran another one here that uses another template to create an HTTP trigger within that Azure Functions project. And we're actually to the point now where I think we can run this if we'd like to. So, got our sample function here. Actually, I'll kind of walk everybody through this Azure function here. If you've never dealt with Azure Functions before, they're super simple. So basically what they are is exactly like it sounds, like a function, like a method that runs off in the cloud. It's like, think of AWS Lambdas, things like that. They're just small, little tiny things. And I thought that would be perfect for generating a QR code because it doesn't really take a lot, as you'll see today, it doesn't take a lot of code to do this with this library. So there's no use in going and building this huge web API and this huge structure and putting it on a server. No, we'll just build the method and throw it up on a little service in the cloud. So what we have here is we have our public static class. These all run statically. Our function name is going to be PSQRCodeGen. Authorization level is anonymous. You know, as we create this HTTP trigger here, authorization level is anonymous. We want anybody to be able to do it. It accepts GET and POSTs. For route, we have null because the route's going to be created for us. Since we're not doing anything special with routing, we don't have to worry about this, but this is just a string. So this is going to be the route that's on the end of your Azure function. So you could make it say /API/v2/ Jeremy's cool stuff /PSQRCodeGen. It doesn't really matter. It's just kind of a string that you put in there, but it will turn into your route for your Azure function. Then we're passing in an iLogger, of course, and HTTP requests. So as a request comes in, you can read that request and make decisions based on what that request is, and that's what we'll do today. We have log information here where we just say C# HTTP trigger function, processed a request. Next, we're going to grab something. We're going to grab a string of name out of the query, which is name. And that's why we pass in this HTTP request, so we can grab those query parameters. Then we create a new request body here, read it end to async. So if anything is sent in the body of that request, we're going to read it in, deserialize it into JSON. And then we have our response message here. And this is just kind of a fancy ternary thing here, where if string is null or empty, then we're going to say trigger executed successfully, please pass a name in. If we pass a name in, then it's going to say hello name, this executed successfully. So yeah, let's just try it out here. We'll say func start. Open up Edge here. Could not load file or assembly. Try func start again. All right, so we're gonna have to figure out why this isn't working. I've never seen this before. Azure Web Jobs extension could not load file or assembly system.net HTTP formatting, which is, I don't think it's in here. Parameter provider, value cannot be null. So that has to be probably somewhere in here. We did our .NET restore. We could try .NET build, see if we get that same message. Oh no, the build succeeded on it, so this might be something else. I probably should have rebooted after I installed that that functions thing here. So I'm just gonna Google this, since I've never seen this before. Not sure exactly what it is. Let's Google it, or Bing it. We'll Bing it since I have Edge open right here. Could not load file or assembly. We definitely want it to be specific to this one. Accept all cookies. This is a Python one, but uninstall and reinstall the Azure Functions core tools. Man, I suppose I could, I'll try a repair first, and then, yeah, like I said, I probably should have rebooted after I installed this. But let's see if we can do a repair real quick, and if that'll do it. Repair. This is one of the things I love about streaming. I love messing up live because we can solve this together. I've done a repair. Allow it to make changes. Yeah. And we'll let it do a repair. Ended prematurely. Okay. That's not going to work. So we're going to remove it. Just as the person on Stack Overflow was talking about. Let's remove it, reinstall it. Probably should have rebooted, but it's a little late now. I need hold music. That's one of the things I should add to my stream, is some good hold music that we can sit here and listen to Chuck Mangione or something. Okay. So now we've done that. Uninstalled it. Let's reinstall it. I accept. And we'll reinstall those Azure Function core tools. And we'll see if that's our solution. Like I said, I've never run into this one before. Fun times. All right. Finish. Now let's see where we're at here. Down here, func start. Would you look at that? Uninstalling and reinstalling worked. I'm going to dig into that a little bit, because that's one of those things, that's the type of thing that keeps me up at night, right? I'm like sleeping, my head hits the pillow, and I think, why didn't that work? Why did uninstalling and reinstalling just instantly work? Yeah, so I'm going to look into that a little more. However, now we've got our function up and running. This is the hello world function that comes when you scaffold out in Visual Studio, or if you do it from the CLI, it scaffolds out this hello world thing. And it shows you right here, functions, PS, QR code gen, get and post. Here's our API. Here's our URL. So let's click that. Let's go over to Edge. Here we go. Now, since we know we have access to the code, we know that we can just call the URL or URI, whatever you'd like to call it. We can just call it like this and not put any parameters on it, and it'll say this HTTP trigger executed successfully. We could even make up params for it, right? We could say this is this, doesn't really matter. However, we know that if we pass in a name, because we have it in our code here, we know that if we pass in a name as a query parameter, string name, then it will do something different. It'll display the name. So let's do that really quick. Let's say name Jeremy. Now you can see it says, hello, Jeremy. This HTTP trigger executed successfully. So we're going to utilize this, but this is how easy it is to just pass in different parameters. So we're good. You can send a get, you can send a post, doesn't really matter. Then you hit Control C, we've shut it down, we've suspended it, and now we can jump into something else. So one of the things I'm going to do is use this QR code generator package here. It's called QR code generator, and this is a QR code generator for .NET. It's an open source library for generating QR codes. It works great. You can use text strings, byte arrays. It's super fast. Generally, this is something that you'd use probably in a desktop application, but you can use it in a Windows application. As it says here, we have example code for WinForms, WPF, ASP.NET, ImageSharp, etc. So we're going to copy this, put it over here, and we're going to install that package. And I'm still getting some messages here. Okay. Well, what can you do? Oh, I don't have NuGet on here. So this is a pretty new Windows 11 installation. I have installed some stuff on it, but I just use this for streaming, and yeah, I don't have a lot of stuff on here, so. Oh, did it say it was installing NuGet? Automatically download and install NuGet now. Let's just manually download it. Why not? Open, blocked, unblock it, keep, open. Doesn't have any action associated with it, so let's try this. Let's try this again and see if we can get it to install. Or we'll go to NuGet. CLI tools is what I'm looking for. Actually, I'll bring this over here so people can see. We're going to do the CLI tools, which should be .CLI or NuGet exe. I can't ever remember installing NuGet, which is kind of interesting. I honestly don't remember installing it ever, so we're going to install it now. As time goes on, this .NET machine will become more and more useful as like my laptop and my other machine are. This, we still have this thing running. Or we did still have this What's My IP thing running. Nope. So I think we can do this with .NET. We'll say .NET, add package, and this is net code create dot QR code generator. There we go. It's like that one installed properly. So good. Fantastic. We also need to add another package here called Skia Sharp. And I'll show you when we get into that why we're installing Skia Sharp. This basically actually generates the bitmaps from the byte stream. So let's see, everything is good. Writing assets. Yep. Skia Sharp. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Maybe it's Skia Sharp. I don't know. Not sure. But one of the things now I note in here in the article, Skia Sharp includes the ability to generate bitmaps, but you must download and add this file to your project. So we're going to create QR code bitmaps extensions.cs. And we're just going to add this extension to the class. I've got a new C# file here. Back to wherever the heck that was. There we go. We'll go here. View it raw. And this is how we can use it to actually generate the bitmaps that we want to generate, because we want this to be a bitmap image that we're going to display on the screen dynamically. So here we have save as PNG. This is probably the most important thing right here is we've got a couple of methods here for saving as a PNG, which is what we want. So now we've got those installed. We're happy, we're good. Let me close that window. We'll go back here. And I can see that this is playing audio, so it's probably echoing. I don't know where it's playing audio, but somewhere. Maybe not. If anyone hears an echo, let me know. Because I see audio here. So I'm just going to mute it. And let's go down to the next part here. So we've got our QR code generation tools. Now we're going to create the generator function. So we can delete this thing completely. This is the existing standard default one. Let's just go ahead and remove this whole thing so we can kind of start all over again. Now our function pretty much does nothing. But we're going to say function name. We're going to name this what? QR code. Actually, we'll put a verb in there. Generate QR code. And so now we can create our new function. This will change our route. So our route before was a little bit different, but by naming this generate QR code, it's going to add it to the route. And look at that. We've got some autocomplete here that might help us out a little bit, but I'm going to just copy this from the article, and then we'll kind of go through the code here. So now we have a static method, just like the other one. It returns a task, and we're going to call it generate here. And it says remove async, blah, blah, blah. It's fine for now. And we're passing in those parameters that we did before with the HTTP trigger. We have authorization level anonymous. This time, instead of get and post, we're just going to have get. That's all we need for this is get. And we're going to use get and then attach query parameter. And then that's going to generate our QR code for us. It's going to be awesome. We'll pass in the request, the iLogger, etc. And we'll go to our next piece of code. And like I said, so you don't have to see me fumble and type through it. We're just going to copy and paste. even though our tabs are just all over the place today here. There, let's format that. Now we have a string of QR text. And what this does is this is going to just grab a query parameter off of that URI, which is great, right? Make sure we're still, okay, we're still going. So we're going to take this QR text query parameter and just turn it into a string. Now, if you're going to build a production application, this is okay. However, you're going to want to do a lot of checking on that string and look for things like anything, SQL injection, buffer overflows, blah, blah, blah. You'll definitely want to check that. You might even want to check to make sure it is a URL, because we're turning URLs into QR codes, but somebody could put junk in there. But that's a little out of scope for today. I don't think we'll have time for it, but if people are interested, we can go back into this and tighten it up security-wise. Let's log a message here. Log.log information string, and we're going to say generating a QR code for this, and we'll just do QR text. So here we're just going to log, we're generating a QR code for whatever.com that you put in there. And this way we can just spot check it as we're watching. We can see that log. Now, we want to take a string and encode it into a QR code and then export that to a PNG. So we're going to make a call to the QR code library that we installed earlier. This is that QR code generator. And this is what it looks like. And we've got to add the using up there. That's why I just right-clicked and did it. But here we're saying this is going to be our QR. Our QR, it's going to say QR code, and we're going to encode the text. And that text, of course, is the text that's passed in through the query parameter into the URI. Next, we're going to do quality. Now, this is something that I learned about. There's several levels of error correction for QR codes. So sometimes you may have noticed that you see a QR code that's relatively small, doesn't have a whole lot of information in it. And what that is it's a low error correction level. Like maybe it's a sticker that's going to go somewhere and it's not going to be damaged. You can turn it up to medium or high, and you can go with a lot of error correction in there. So the reason that they do that is because if they're used in, like, say, a factory or something, or a metal shop or a mechanic shop or something, where they expect the QR code to be damaged in some way, they expect smudges of grease across it, for the label to tear, etc., they can add a lot of extra error correction in there, so they become bigger. And you've probably seen these QR codes that are like huge. And so what I decided was to just go with medium for this, but maybe we'll play around with that after we generate it, and we'll just kind of see what the differences are with those. So I'll put that in as a to-do. Generate different ones? Question mark. All right, so this is all it takes to, I mean, this is abstracted really well. So this is all it takes to produce this QR code. It's just this one single call. However, we're going to add a little more. Now, we added the bitmap extension. So let's see. Here we will, and this was the extension that we added here. And so what I did was I kind of looked through this and saw, you know, what I wanted to do with it, how I wanted to scale it, how I wanted to generate it. And I came up with this. So var PNG out is exactly what it sounds like. It's a PNG that we're going to create. So we want to take this QR code and just turn it into a PNG. 10 is the scaling. So that's, you can just scale it to different sizes. You can make a big, gigantic image, little tiny image, whatever. And then, of course, we have the colors. So the color of the actual QR is going to be black for the data, and white will be the background color. And this is just Skia Sharp colors. Has all the colors you'd expect from Windows. Just for fun, we can make it something like dark green. Why not? And now comes the fun part. So we have a PNG out. If we wanted to, we could just write this to a file and store the PNG, wherever in the execution environment where this Azure function lives. If we were writing like a console app or a WPF app, then we could take this PNG out, stuff it somewhere. However, we're going to create a JSON return object for it, and we're going to spit it into that JSON. This was the solution that I thought would be pretty cool if we want to make just a simple call to the Azure function. Say, give me www.website.com. You spit back a stream. I'll figure out what to do with it. So I'm returning that in JSON. That way we could use several different. We could use a web app. We can use a Blazor app. We could use even a WPF app if we wanted to grab that information and crunch it into a file that we can use. So to create that, I'm going to create a class. It's going to be a public class within here called return object. This return object just has image. That's the only property it has on it. It's image, and this image is going to be string, as you'll notice. So you might wonder why are you doing it string? Because we're going to push it in as a stream of characters, and then we're going to reassemble it on the other side. So let's create a return object here. And we're just going to call that our result. So our result dot image. It's going to be some kind of string, right? So what we want to do is take this PNG here, and we want to convert it to a base 64 string, and just send that base 64 string out into the JSON. This may not be the absolute best solution for this, but as I was thinking about it, and originally designing this thing, I was thinking, well, we could create a file within the execution environment. We can push that file up. We can have the client download the file, things like that. But there's a lot of security stuff around that I'm not really comfortable with. And this way just kind of seems like a QR code isn't going to be that big, ideally. So we could just base 64 it and throw it out. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to say convert to base 64 string, and we're just going to do that with that PNG out. Now the PNG comes out with these colors and scale, etc., comes into the stream, and it comes into a byte stream. We're just going to take that byte stream, convert it to a base 64 string, and then attach that to the image property of our return object. And our return object, we're going to turn that into JSON. So the easiest way to do that is return a new JSON object. What am I thinking? JSON result. So we noticed up here that we're returning a task with an iAction result. So this is just any of the action results that you're familiar with if you've worked with ASP.NET web APIs and things like that, even MVC stuff back in the MVC days. This is just an action result that we're returning. So we're going to say JSON result, our result. So we're going to pass this return object, which is a very, very simple object, obviously. We're going to return this as a JSON result and just serialize it into JSON. Now I think this is all we need. So let's run it. What was it? Func start. Fingers crossed. We're doing it. Yeah, looks good. Okay. So now we have a different URI here. We also, you know, before, if I can, it doesn't look like I can scroll up that far, I don't think. Or it's going to show what it was before. But before we had get, comma, post. Now we just have get because we're only taking get commands. And we have QR code here. Whoops. That was silly. Control click is what I wanted to do. And it failed. Value cannot be null. So we have to put in that parameter, right? So we'll go here. Generate QR code, and we'll say QR text equals something. Test. There we go. Now we have this silly big JSON result. This is a base 64 string. So if you've ever done base 64 encoding, it is a way to take images and turn them into text to stream over the line. And that's exactly what we've done here. So, looks great. This JSON looks like it's what we're expecting. You know, it's just a single JSON object with an image in it. Cool, that's exactly what we want. And we can look here, there should be a log. Oh, there we go. Generating a QR code for test. So let's put in an actual URL. See how that works. Pluralsight.com. Sweet. Good to go. So here's everything that we've done so far. We'll just go back through and added comments. Let's see, get this from query string, log what was sent in. To do, generate different ones. Yes, we will do that here in just a minute. Our PNG from byte array, color it, and then create a new object to return. Then here, I'm going to turn PNG into a base 64 and attach it to object. Then we're going to return the object as JSON. Return object as JSON. Actually, I guess it is a JSON result. Sure. I'll accept that. And that's fantastic. So now we need to build a front end. And so what I thought with this was, should I add, so this front end is actually going to run on the Azure function. This is what makes this a little bit wild and weird, is this Azure function is acting like an API right now. So we make an API call, we send it a query parameter, it spits back a PNG embedded in JSON. Cool, awesome. However, I wanted to build like a front end for it. So this front end is just going to be an index.html that gets shoved out. And so when you go to the base URL, which we were at earlier, it's just going to spit out this index.html that's going to make these calls for us. So what I need to do is create a folder named www. Whoops, that is not a folder, that is a file. Create a folder named www. This is not something that people do ever that I know of. However, it does work. I got it to work. when I was writing the article and stuff. So it is something that works, but it's just not something that's done very often. People don't generally serve up web pages from Azure Functions, but we're different and we're unique, so we're going to do it. We're going to create an index.html in there. And I'm just going to copy this code so you don't have to watch me type it all out. Here's our HTML opening tag, body opening tag, H2 QR code generator. And we want to get input text from the user. So we want to get that URL that they're putting in. Here's another place for input validation. So earlier when I talked about input validation and how you should make sure it's a URL, make sure it's not a giant long string that's going to crash things, make sure it's not SQL injection, things like that. I would recommend doing that if you were going to actually build this and produce it and push it live onto a website. I would recommend you do that input validation there at the function level and then also here at the JavaScript level. Obviously at the JavaScript level, it's easy to bypass, but it's always good. As I've built web apps over the years, I love to do input sanitization and filtering at the JavaScript level on the client. And then if somebody's smart enough to bypass that, then have it on the back end too. And that kind of gives you 2 layers of protection from people who are trying to do bad things with your application. So we have our input box here. It has an ID of input box. We're going to use that. And then we'll create a button. And like I said, I'm just copying and pasting from the article here so we don't have to do anything. You don't have to watch me type it out. So here we have an input type of button. On click, get QR code. So this will create our QR code. And then we'll need to do that, right? And it's gonna, let's make a div here with an ID of demo. This is where our actual PNG is going to live. Next, I have some more code here. Script. And this is going to be our QR code function. Different formatter for HTML. We'll use this one. There we go. Now here we're just creating a new, this is some pretty simple stuff here. We're just creating a new HTTP request. And we're going to send out that request. When it comes back, we're going to parse that JSON. We're going to get element by ID demo, change that inner HTML to, you see this? So when I return that base64 string that we saw earlier, if I still have it loaded, yeah, we have nothing here but just a string. I mean, it's really hard to tell what this even is. If it weren't named image, you might think this is some weird kind of hash thing or something. It's highly doubtful somebody would guess that, but it's a base64 string because we're going to append this header here so that the application knows that this is a data image PNG and it's base64 encoded. And then we're going to dump that string in there. So when we do this, it's going to write out this HTML. It's going to write out an image tag. It's going to dump all that in so that there is no actual file until the browser renders it out in the screen. So there's no storage that you have to worry about. There's no passing things through. You don't create a file on the execution environment and pop it up, anything like that. We're just literally taking a base64 string and rendering it out, tacking some stuff on it, and we're good to go. Someone asked, why not use fetch? I mean, I could use fetch for this. Right now, I'm just kind of going through what I did for the original article. And so this one is just some plain vanilla JavaScript that I put together to do our QR code. You could easily do this in something like Vue or make it a little bit fancier, you know, like Vue, React, etc. I'm going to make sure that I have the right URL here. It looks like I do. And this will be our small UI, basically. So, as I say in the article, Azure functions are not intended to be web servers. They don't make very good web servers. However, for this case, we want to make this self-contained little application that punches out this index.html and stuff like that. But really, they're not web servers. They shouldn't be used as web servers. Azure Static Web Apps. So if you want to stay in the Azure world, Azure Static Web Apps is a great way to go. And you could publish this to an Azure Static Web App. One advantage there is you could just do a bunch of modification to your client and not have to republish the Azure function every time, and vice versa. You could do stuff on your Azure function and not have to worry about the client. This way, we push everything every time we make a change. However, this is just for fun. So we want this to return. Let's open this back up. We want it to return an HTTP response message instead of this action result here for serving up the index page. So let's jump into that. Let's add in another function. There we go. I'll copy and paste it. And we're going to create another function here that is going to be for the form. Oops. We'll format this so it's not a complete mess. Even the formatter's kind of choking a little bit here. There we go. So what we want here is an HTTP response message. So that's what we're going to return. We'll use system.net HTTP, and we're going to return an HTTP response message when somebody calls that Azure function without any of the query parameters. So it's a little hacky, it's a little wild, but it works, and it works pretty well. I could see myself, if I were still a professional developer, building micro tools, which I did that for years and years and years. If I would have had something like this back then, I would have loved it, because I did this stuff with PHP and with ASP, where I would try to bundle everything in that application into one single bit of code. That way we could deploy it and forget about it, or deploy it and mess with it without building the entire system. So I really like making these, now they call them microservices, but I like making these little micro applications. And I would have loved years ago to have something like this Azure Functions. So we're going to open the index HTML that we put into the www folder, and we're going to read all the text from that. So once again, we're doing something a little hacky like we did before. We took the PNG and put it into a base64 string into JSON, and then we read that JSON back with JavaScript and added some headers and made it an image. This is equally hacky in that we're going to take this index HTML and we're going to read it all into a string. So I will copy and paste that here. Now notice we're doing context.functionAppDirectory. So wherever this function lives, ideally, and there's some things that you have to do sometimes, but ideally, wherever this function lives, it should have a www folder with index.html, and we're just going to take that, rip all the text out of it, and send it out. So we'll do that with the HTTP response message. And it looks like I forgot to use system.net. There we go. And what does it not like? Namespace can't. Oh, this should be inside the class. Got it. Within a public static class. Okay, that. So I just got my Yeah, got all my brackets all wild. So this should work. Okay, so now we're gonna create a new HTTP response message of OK for the result. We're gonna add some headers here. I told you this is hacky. Here we need to add in HTTP headers. So what we're going to do is create a new response message of OK 200. We're going to add some headers to it. We're going to say the content type is text HTML. The content, the actual body of that content, we're going to create a byte array from the bytes in index page. So we're going to open up this file, pull all of the text out of it, put it into a string. Then we're going to get it byte by byte and make a byte array out of it and throw it into content as a result. What is cool about this is you could make this fairly dynamic. So right now it's very static. We have an index.html that's just sitting on the hard drive, very static. However, we could make it dynamic because we're reading this into the string of index page. So we could do a set of string replaces based on logic, things like that. You could say, if they're coming from here, we'll put this here. And you could do all kinds of stuff to that string before you crunch it into a byte array and kick it out. Hello, no. Hacky. This is beyond hacky. Yeah, it is beyond hacky, but it's just kind of cool. You know, I thought it was a good way. Like I wanted to make a QR code generator that was like as simple as it could possibly be. So using this Azure function as simple as possible. And then I thought, well, why not make the Azure function into a web server of some type? And as I said earlier, they don't make good web servers. However, today we're doing it this way. This would work perfectly fine for some small little micro application that doesn't get used a whole lot. Hello. So we have the entire function on the page. So I'm using this article as notes. We have the entire function here. Then we need to copy to the output directory. So we'll go in here to our CS proj. I think I can just put it right here. Yeah. Copy to output directory. We'll copy this so that we always copy that index HTML with the function. So copy to output directory always, and that's where we're going to copy that index.html. And if you have things like CSS or graphics or I don't know, all of that stuff would have to be included so you could do that the same way, and this just copies it. So let's do func start again and see what it does. Fingers crossed that we're going to see something a little different. No breaking. So now you can see we have a form and a generate QR code function. Wendell says, can't you just watch www star? Yeah, I think so. I hadn't tried that, but that would be, it seems like that would work. All right. And there's our index HTML that we're just spitting out of here. Let's see if it works. Fingers crossed. There it is. It looks like I changed the background color to green, which is cool. And, oh yeah, so I could have it watch instead of the index HTML. Yeah, probably. I'm going to do some revisions to this thing as I go on, but this is our super simple QR code generator. Now I did promise that I would show you some of the different error correction modes because it is different. So let's do that now before we start publishing it. Awesome, the QR code works. I just tested it. Sweet. I didn't even think to do that. I guess I could have used my phone or something, which I think is what I did in the video. So here we have this error correction. And we have high, low, medium. I don't know what quartile. I have no idea what that is. But let's go with low really quick. And we'll run it. start. Create QR code. Notice it's a little smaller. So this is low error correction, which means this thing has to be perfect. It has to be pristine. Otherwise, it won't work. Like if you scratch off this end of it, it's not going to work. So we did medium earlier. Let's go with high this time. We'll run this. And I didn't know about this before I started this project, these different QR code error correction levels. It's really kind of cool. So there's high, it's a bit bigger. And with high error correction, then you can make a scratch across this or something. So they use this for those QR code stickers. If you're putting these stickers all over machinery or something, they're gonna get bashed up and dirty, and that's where this comes from. I'm gonna see what that other one was, just because I saw it in the options. Yes, quartile. I don't know what quartile means, but I'm going to try it. All right. Looks the same. So I don't know what that means. Yeah, it looks the same. Let's see if it works the same. Yeah, it does look the same as medium. So I'm going to hit it with my phone really quick. Yep. Yeah, so I hit it with my phone, went to pluralsight.com. I don't know. But it seems to work. So now we need to deploy this thing. See, we've turned this image into an image in the browser. Cool stuff. I figured this would take about an hour, and we're a little past an hour, but that's fine. That's fine. So here we'll type in AZ login. I'm going to move this over here. Morgan@gmail.com. Now I'm logged in. Cool. All right. So we can log in web browser. Then I'll go to the Azure console here. And this I'm going to do off screen too. Why not? If you're really curious what I'm doing, it is in the article. Oh, let's see. Internet never lies. The QR code provides the L, low, medium, quartile, and high possible values. These values allow for 7%, 15%, 25%, and 30% recovery. So it can be a third-ish corrupt and still work. Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for checking that out. I had never seen the quartile before, but yeah, it's good for recovery of the symbol if you scratch it or smudge it or mess it up in some way. Which I remember, I worked with UPC codes like years and years ago. In 2001, when I was a network administrator at a company, and they used barcodes a lot. And it was as this place that made vaults. It made like concrete vaults. And so we were in an office, you know, we had an office and a data center and stuff like that. But we had the big giant plant out back, and we were responsible for running those machines out there and keeping those things good. And that was a big problem that we had all the time, was they had these barcodes that they would scan. And so they have a little gun and bleep, 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 bleep. And you'd be amazed how often we'd print those barcodes and scrape them off and put new barcodes on there. Just all the time. That was the job of the IT folks at the time at that company. But I can remember, like, there would be a barcode that's just kind of off nowhere where nobody would see it. And if it got dusty or dirty or had cement all over it, they would just come and wipe it with their finger and scan it. But they would always end up somehow, it would get scraped or grooved or something on it. So it's kind of It's kind of wild how dirty and crazy factories can be. So I'm going to create a new function app here. I've got several of them. As you can see, I've been messing around with functions a lot lately. I've got some of them that are even running applications for our family get-togethers and stuff. So let's see. New resource group. Put this in the streaming resource group. I guess I don't really have to hide a lot of this. PSQR code generator. And we're just going to run this as a code. .NET runtime stack. We're going to use .NET 6. Region, let's keep it close to Pacific. That's where I'm at. West US. Here we have functions premium. Things like I'm going to use consumption serverless. Storage account. It's going to create a new one for me. Just fine. I don't need network injection. I don't need monitoring. I don't need any of this stuff. Well, I might. I don't know yet. Review and create. You have AZ mask installed. Oh. Holy moly. I never even knew something like that existed. That is awesome. AZ mask. Chrome Web Store. All right. I'm not in Chrome, but I can jump to Chrome. Thank you. That is the most awesome solution of the week for me right there. Because I'm always moving stuff off when I'm streaming. Oh, it works on Edge too. I was just using Edge because I have Chrome windows like running everything. And so I'm not an Edge connoisseur, but yeah, let's see if I'll just install it for Edge too. Also, to plug my own stuff, get the no docs extension for Visual Studio. It hides your values in XML and JSON files. All right, let me bring it up on the string. So you can open secrets JSON and config files without doxing all your secrets. All right, no docs extension. Put it up on the screen here. Don't dox yourself. So yeah, check that out right there. So if you do any streaming or presentation or whatever, like I've done a lot of that stuff where I build a video for YouTube or something else, and I do the blur filters over top of things, and not fun, but necessary. So I'm going to install and set up all that stuff for my next stream. So thank you very much. That is really cool. Created my QR code generator. Let's see if it's starting to deploy. And I'm glad I was finally able to get onto Twitch. So I had some strange difficulties with streaming today, and I'm not really sure. You know, you do the same thing every time and it works every time until it doesn't. But today it wasn't streaming to Twitch, it wasn't streaming to Twitter, all these different places. And then I started getting messages on Twitter like, hey, your stream that's up there is broken. Like 2 people were like, it's broken. You're just showing a black screen. So now that I've got it all started again, I can't see my Twitter window from here. I don't really care that much about it. What I really care about is putting it here on Twitch. I think streaming and then hosting, like I'm hosting it on my personal channel, streaming it on the Pluralsight channel. Yeah. Maybe I just did something silly. Let's go to resource, PS code generator. Ta-da! Your Functions 4.0 app is up and running. And I don't remember what we called that. Form. That's right. API form. Can't be found. Oh, it was in here somewhere. Oh yeah, I gotta push it. I'm pretty sure that's what I'm doing wrong here. So I called this one PS QR code gen, right? So I just had a total brain fart because I'm like, oh, Azure Function's up and running, but it's not the one that's on my desktop right now. So this one will use the function tools again. Azure Function app, publish, PS QR code gen, I think I called it. No zip. Can't find it. Let's look. Oh, PS QR code generator. Let's see if this one works. There we go. Now we're pushing. Now we're cooking with gas. This guy used to say that that I worked with a long time ago. So like before I got into IT and before I went to college and everything, I worked with this really old guy. And he said, now we're cooking with gas. And none of us actually knew what he was talking about until we started talking to him. And he was talking about some commercials that they would play in the 60s or 70s to advertise gas. They would say, oh, now you're cooking with gas, instead of, because they're trying to push people to use natural gas instead of electricity. Anyway, like 20 plus years later, I'm still saying it all the time. Now we're cooking with gas. And my kids look at me and they're like, because we actually don't have natural gas where I live, so they have no idea what I'm talking about. We cook with electricity. All right, we're uploading. One warning, 0 errors. Consider using the await. Yeah. This isn't a real app. Upload completed successfully. Oh, and this one gives us our URLs, whatever you want to call them, and there's our form. And now it's up on an Azure website, or an Azure function. This, you're looking at an Azure Function web server, and as I said, you don't want to use Azure Functions as a web server too much, because you're not going to have anything that a regular like IAS or Nginx or anything. You won't have any of those things that it gives you if you can't write it into the header. But for something like this, sure. Let's see if it works. And it doesn't. Oh, it does. I'm just impatient. I was thinking we'd have another break and that we could say, oh, let's jump in and figure out why it's broke. But no, it's not broke. Let's change the color and publish it again. I don't know. So here for the background, we changed it to white green. Let's change it to beige. Change this to dark green. Change the scale to 20. Publish it. With the correct name. Again. All right. Then we'll see what that looks like. And I'm going to install these plugins. Like as soon as I'm done here, I'm going to install these plugins that you recommended. So I can do Azure stuff in front of everybody. And I can even write code and not be sharing my secrets. And it's not that I don't trust y'all, but somebody goofy can get on here and start messing with it. Now notice today I did all this with Visual Studio Code, and I used, the Azure CLI and the Func CLI and .NET CLI and blah, blah, blah CLI. I like CLIs. I'm a huge fan of them. They're really fun, especially for simple projects like this. Like, I like the CLI and Visual Studio Code model. However, you can do all of this stuff in Visual Studio. In Visual Studio, it makes it easy. It makes life easy. In a professional environment, when I've coded professionally, at companies as a software engineer, I probably wouldn't even have thought to use Visual Studio Code and CLI for some of the projects that I worked on, because they were so enormous and there was so much integration and all this big cool stuff with Visual Studio. But for things like this, it's fine. And it gets better and better all the time to where, basically Visual Studio is just a wrapper. That's all it is. It's a really, really good wrapper. But it's essentially a wrapper for all the stuff that we're doing here today. All right, we'll do our QR code generator here. It looks like it's reloading. We'll change it up. Use jeremymorgan.com this time. Create QR code. Ta-da! There it is, scale 20, so it's quite a bit bigger. You could make this thing huge, I imagine. Let's try it out. Let's see if it works. There we go. jeremymorgan.com. All right. And kind of a funny tech thing, my kids are fairly technical, but none of them are software developers or really dig in, except my one daughter likes to stream and play Minecraft and play online games, but they're not super techy. But yet they teach me things all the time. Like, we went to a restaurant and they're like, scan the QR code to get our menu. And I bring up this app and she's like, why are you using an app? You have an iPhone. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm using an app to read this QR code for this menu. And she's like, no, just open up the camera. Like, oh. Boonk. And this says all my kids are software devs. Important note, I have no kids. That's awesome. I figured one of them might get into software, but yeah, they're all very intelligent and geeky in just different areas. But yeah, anyway, she said, just open up the phone. And I'm like, okay, open up your camera. Oh, and then you click on it. It's like, I've been using this useless app for years, so I should have known better. Anyway, that's our QR code generator. It's available on GitHub, even though this is all the code that we've written today, essentially, is this and this. And we have this like self-contained little application that sits out on an Azure function. And like most of these, they run hot and cold. So this is something, if you're actually considering using it, just know that it runs hot and cold. So that first byte is going to be slow if it's been cold for a little while. Back in our days, we had QR code apps, and we liked it that way. That's right. We had the QCat. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but that was where QR codes, I believe, originated from the QCat. But I remember there was like this thing, and you plug it into USB to your laptop and click it. And part of the dream they talked about back then is, oh, we'll put these signs up, and we'll be exactly what we use them for now, right? They're like, we'll put these signs up, and then people can click on this thing and scan it with their QCat, and then they'll have a URL to the menu, and they could sit with their laptop. And back in the 90s, people were talking about like going to dinner with a laptop. And but yeah, I guess the dream came true. It just came true years later and much better. So you don't have to carry your laptop in to order something from a menu. I also remember like the old Surface demos. I would love to see that. So when Microsoft Surface was still in the concept phase, they had a really cool video of different ways people use them. They show a construction worker, click, 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 pointing, And one of the things they showed was a menu to where you're sitting on a glass table and it pops up a menu with a picture of the food and click here to order it. And that was one of the use cases for the Surface that I still would like to see them do. Yeah, that's what it is, a Surface table. And yeah, I would love to see them do that. I think I would love to see some restaurant do that, where you could come up and be like, oh, what's this? I don't know what this food is. Click it, and there's this huge picture and all the calorie information. Awesome stuff. I'd like to see it someday. Be fantastic. So we've got our project up here. It works. It's great. Maybe next stream I'll integrate it in with our other What's My IP toolkit or something. I don't know. Do something fun, but we'll make some of these like one-off small little tools as we go. And as I've said before, here on All Hands on Tech Live, I'm your host today. On Thursday, it's going to be David Neal. He's awesome. David Neal is building a teleprompter app in Electron. It's really awesome. So you should follow us on Twitch, twitch.tv/pluralsight_live, to see the All Hands on Tech stuff. It's really cool. I'm going to be doing Tuesdays at 11, and David's going to be Thursdays at 11 Pacific time. And yeah, we're just going to build some cool stuff. Eventually, we're going to collaborate. So I don't want to jump on his project that he's working on right now, but eventually at some point, David and I are going to collaborate and do a stream together where we build something fun. We haven't figured out quite what that is yet, because David probably doesn't want me to tell everybody, actually knows a lot of .NET stuff, a ton of .NET stuff. He's all about the JavaScript and the Node and stuff these days. But yeah, we'll do a collaboration of some type. It'll be really fun. So next Tuesday, we are having a recharge week next week. So neither of us will be on this stream next week. I might be on my personal stream. I don't know yet. But the Tuesday after that, I'm going to come jump on. We're going to do a cool project. And every Tuesday at 11 o'clock, I will be on here doing some kind of thing. And we might do a big long-term project. Let's see. Oh, you could actually buy the Surface table for $7K. Whew. They made a demo where they flew a drone from the table, did it at Mix 2011 in Vegas, and crashed it into the audience. Oh, now I have to look this up. So they remote flew a drone. And I don't know if you know this, but drones are my thing lately. I've really gotten into drones a lot. But they remote flew a drone from the table and Mix in Vegas and crashed it into the audience. I never knew that. That is awesome, and I definitely will have to see if there's a YouTube or something about it, or even a detailed article. That's funny. And you were there. That is pretty awesome. I hope nobody was hurt. I'm not gonna sit and laugh at people getting hurt. I hope nobody is hurt, but that is pretty funny. That is something that would be very cool to see. I could see how you'd remember it 10 years later. Everyone's fine. Good. That's awesome. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming. Sweating through the initial technical things where I had the starting now thing going for 3 minutes and then broke it and had to restart it. I thank everybody for coming back and sticking with me anyway. Thank you, Thindle. I think that's how you say that. Thank you very much for your assistance on here and for these awesome plugins that I'm going to install and use. And I recommend everyone else do the same. I had it in a browser window around here somewhere, but if you're watching this, you're probably watching this after the fact, so you can just rewind it. And I brought up the screens and you'll see it in the chat. Anyway, follow us on Twitch, twitch.tv. AZ mask, and don't dox yourself. No dox with 2 X's. So very cool. I'm going to install that for my future stuff. So yeah, follow us on Twitch Tuesdays and Thursdays, 2 p.m. Eastern, I believe it is, 11 a.m. Pacific. And David and I are going to build some cool stuff. And we're also going to drag some of the other developer relations folks from Pluralsight here to do some stuff soon. So, yeah, thank you all for for watching and joining in, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.